Cox, and today I'm going to talk to you about, in general, increasing your fuel economy and longevity of your truck and SUV. And I'm going to talk about a truck that I bought recently. It's an old clunker, a 2007 Mitsubishi Canter Fuso. I hope Mitsubishi don't sue me for saying that, but I've got some great things to say about that truck. Never owned a turbo before, never owned a truck before, and so I bought it to tow my fifth wheel caravan. And what happened was this: I drove the truck up quite a far distance up the coast. It was so noisy in the cabin that we were having to yell at each other to hear each other, and I thought that was really atrocious. But I spoke to a chap just yesterday. I've had the truck for 2 years, and I spoke to a chap just yesterday who said that his truck, even from new, was extremely noisy. So this is going to be good news for those of you who have new trucks as well, for the noise and for the fuel economy even of a new truck. So what I did with my old truck was this: on the way up the coast to park it for a few months, it was extremely noisy, and I discovered that it was getting 5.5 kilometers to a litre. I know everybody quotes litres per 100, but I'm old school, and it was getting 5.5 k's to 1 litre. And I know that by filling the 100 litre tank right up to the very top. You couldn't fit another 5 mil in there. At the same pump, I refueled to find out that that my test, that my additives had improved, my additions to what I did had cured significantly the fuel economy. So 5.5 k's to a litre. I figured that the fuel economy is so bad for me that I'm going to have to sell the truck, and I only just bought it. Now the guy who fitted the fifth wheel hitch for me had the same brand, same model, Canter Fuso, and he was getting, as a service vehicle, he was getting 5 k's per litre. So, and he probably had less gear on his truck than me towing the 3,900 kilo gooseneck. So what happened was this: I figured that I'm going to have to do something about the fuel economy, or I'm going to have to sell the truck, and I need to move that gooseneck caravan around. So what I did was this: I had some thinking. I went to my mediumship. I don't meditate, but I went to my mediumship, and I got guided to do this. I actually had an automotive engineer tell me that this particular product I'm about to tell you about is just garbage. But luckily for me, when he told me that, I'd had 2 decades of prior use and on cars, and it's profound. It's remarkable how much it works. By putting 15% into the motor of a car, the fuel economy increases by 1 kilometre per litre, and over 3 tankfuls of petrol, it's paid for the Morries. And let me tell you this, that when I was about 18, I was playing with a Morries display. It was a little winding gear thing on the bench of a Wreckers. You might have seen them before. And it had normal oil in one side and Morries in the other side, and you could see how the Morries stayed in the upper regions of the gears that were on the display, which meant cold starts were good, less friction, and etc. But it didn't mention anything about fuel economy when I was 18. I'm 60 now, so yeah. So 42 years ago, I played, and what happened was I was playing with this test device on the bench of a wreckers, and this old chap behind me said, "That's really good. That's really good shit." And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said to me, "It's an additive you put in your engine, and it prolongs the life of the motor and less friction. It runs cooler, etc." Now, back in those days, we had a simple dial gauge that obviously worked with a thermocouple or something in the vehicle. The first of electronics that ever happened into cars, actually some of those thermostats in vehicles were a brass bowl where the brass bowl increased in heat and pressure inside and moved the dial as well. I don't know what he had, but he did say that it ran cooler, and I did notice that a Hilux, the first vehicle I ever put it in, did run cooler, which of course means if you change the lubricant, it's running cooler. That's a heck of a lot less friction. So I never tested the fuel economy back in those days, but this chap said to me that he had 30 taxi cabs back in those days. They would have been either black and white or yellow here in Brisbane. And he said to me, this is back in the days of the old XAs and XBs, and he said to me that 20 of those taxis he ran on a normal Castrol GTX, and the on-time fuel oil changes with filter every time, he said, and the engines ran hot back in those days of taxis, and he got he said he got 1 million miles out of a motor with GDX, Castrol GDX. Now, the 10 other taxis he had, he ran on with a Morris additive, that same stuff that was on the bench, that Morris additive, and he said that those 10 taxis got 2 million miles to a motor. And taxis back in those days would recondition the motors, etc. So the motors were running hot. That's how he told me that. That's how it was that he was able to get those sort of mileage, as well as the Morris. Absolutely astounding. But in my later years, in the last 10 years or so, I've been putting Morris in, and I've been very pedantic with the fuel economy, filling the petrol cap up, filling the fuel tank up right up to the petrol cap per se, and testing with air conditioning, without air conditioning, winter, summer, etc. And every time, of an average, the fuel economy increased by 1.2 kilometres per litre. And as I said, three fuel ups, 3 full tanks of fuel. We'd pay for the Morris back in those days, and of course, as I know, I was getting the longevity of the motor as well. Never put it in a transmission, never put it in a gearbox. So along came the truck, and I started looking at things. I remembering what the mechanical engineer told me, but it does say on the back of the bottle, it says that Morris does not raise the viscosity of the oil. Morris say that. I don't think that they are like that company with that compound you put in the radiator, and that compound that you put in the radiator says that it's a guaranteed fix of the head gasket and stuff like that. Some of us can get a bit swayed by the memory of what we read on those additives to cure head gaskets, but I sincerely believe that Morris does not raise the viscosity of the oil. It's all magic. It's not all magic. These guys are scientific who developed that stuff, and so let me tell you that what I did was I call it stage 1. So at the purchase of the truck, it was getting 5.5 Ks to a litre. The air conditioning was quite good. 2.7 litre turbo truck motor, which does make a difference compared to a car motor. Truck motors are almost like your elite European vehicles, like the Mercedes and Jaguar and stuff like that. Truck motors are built to very specific detail, and they're a better motor than a car. So my truck is a car license. I only need a car license. I downgraded the weight capacity because I don't need a high weight capacity, and so I think it is a 3.5. You can carry 3.5 ton normally with a tray back. So it's downgraded now to a car license. I think I can carry something like 2 ton or something like that, 1750 or something like that. So what happens is this. I call it stage 1 after being a little bit shocked by 5.5 Ks to a litre at the purchase. Stage 1, I dropped the fluids in the diff. I dropped the fluids in the gearbox. The gearbox was new, reconditioned, and I put 100% Morries in both, and it was around about 5 litres each. So the next thing that I did was, at the same time and during that service, I changed the oil. I ran a good oil, but I put 25%, 2 litres into the 8 litre sump of the engine. The first drive on the highway, I was just blown away and totally ecstatic that there was absolutely no noise. It was, I usually say it was like a new truck, but that chap told me yesterday he had a new truck and it was noisy. So it was just quiet as. I could hear the 4BC radio, you know. Not that I listened to it, but anyhow, we could hear each other talk just normally. No noise, fantastic. And also, before the additives, I went through the cuttings with the windows down, and I could hear machinery, the gearbox and diff, of course, pounding away on the dirt on the sides and echoing into the cabin. And so, when going through the same cuttings, after adding Morries to the diff and to the gearbox and to the motor, going for a drive, it was absolutely dead quiet through the cuttings. That was an absolute win for me. But then some months later, I hitched up the gooseneck and did the same distance in reverse, not in reverse gear, but the reverse direction, and then calculated it was actually 7.9 kilometres to a litre. Let's call it 8 Ks to a litre for ease of interpretation. And so what else? What happened next was I heard some chaps talking in one of the auto stores, and some young fellas talking about turbos, talking about intercoolers, talking about piping and stuff. And I heard on TV, I late one night I switched the TV on to see some American mechanic talking about turbo choking and turbo swelling. Choking's pretty obvious what they mean by that, but swelling is when you've got a rubber bend and it bends out of shape. Let me say that when you get plumbing pipes if you were to heat them up and bend them out of shape, they still flow the same amount of water. So swelling, they feel, that's what they term it as, and maybe the swelling is the expansion of the pipe as well in a bend. Let me tell you, that's going to cause problems too, and not in the way that they're talking about. They're talking about choking, and choking, of course, is a reduction in the piping. So what I did was, the young fella said, go up the local hot rod area and to the shops up there, workshops up there, and get them to quote you a new intercooler, a big one. Put the biggest in that they can fit, and it was something about $600 or $800. So I gave that a miss because the Morries only cost me I think about $320 all up. I think they were about $300 all up for the Morries. And let me say that crunching the numbers, I was going to be saving something like $3,500 a year in fuel economy at 50,000 Ks. I might be wrong there on the numbers, but you can crunch them. 7.9 Ks to a litre, 50,000 Ks, and compare it to 5.5 Ks per litre, 50,000 Ks, and you can work it out. It was a good saving, let me tell you. Plus the longevity of the parts. That is the most important part, because you've just about put that engine and gearbox and diff at zero, just about at zero friction. So let me tell you this, that's stage 2. I was sort of prepared by listening to the mechanic on the, a lovely young lady mechanic in America talking about choking, talking about swelling, and so the young lads taking their advice and getting some quotes. So I had to jump back a bit here and do a bit of an edit. I forgot to tell you what is the problem with intercooling piping, turbo piping, with choking and swelling. Hopefully I'll find that section in there and redo that. So what you need to know is this. Choking is a reduction in the piping. My piping reduced by about 5 mil, but it still wasn't smaller than the outlet orifice of the turbo. Now when you get piping that is straight, the Superspeed airflow is going straight in. Now to understand this properly, it helps to understand the terminology of cavitation. Cavitation occurs in brand new water pumps when there's a slight dag of aluminium that hasn't been machined off. They might have missed it, and it causes an upset in the water flow and can eat out the aluminium. Now what happens with turbo is, it isn't choking that's the problem, it isn't swelling that's the problem. What happens is that in cavitation in a water pump with that aluminium dag, what happens is, cavitation is the term that's used to identify what's happening, but what actually happens in the water is eddy currents. There's swirling and an upset of the water flow causing eddy currents, and the eddy currents are causing the major problems. Let me tell you that eddy currents in my book are described as causing hurricanes and all sorts of things, and so just maybe if we study eddy currents and cavitation, we might be able to figure out how hurricanes are caused. Don't question that. Go and look at the book instead of saying you're an idiot. Go and check that out in the book. It's a great description. And now let me jump back to choking. Now remember, with straight piping, you've got super duper airflow speed, and with any choking whatsoever, even if it's the slightest amount, even if it's still larger than the outlet orifice of your turbo, you're going to get upset. You're going to get eddy currents happening in your air system flow of the turbo, right? So now that's the problem with choking. Now swelling, where the pipes swell up or they go out of shape and etc. Good solid silicon piping cures that. But what happens is with the term they call swelling is the same thing. It's an upset in the flow causing eddy currents and all sorts of things to slow down the flow. Yeah. So let's jump back now to the rest of the video, and hopefully I can cut this in. You beauty. Choking, talking about swelling, and so the young lads taking their advice and getting some quotes. So I woke up in the middle of the night, as I do sometimes, and decided to go online and have a look at intercoolers again. I went back there 2 or 3 times at the measurements, measuring up mine, take the gamble, okay, then hopefully their measurements are correct, maybe I can get my bends in properly and stuff. And so I bought an intercooler as big as possible that I could fit in between the chassis to chassis, and at the front. It was about $130 online. It came and arrived not long afterwards, and all the welds and stuff were really worked perfect. They were really professional. And so what I did was next was I went down to the local auto shops. There's 3 of them of different brands here in Beenleigh where I live, and I was dancing back and forth to the shops and buying piping, interconnecting piping. Now let me tell you that my piping, the orifice that leaves the turbo is about 50 or 52 millimeters. I didn't measure it with vernier calipers or anything, but I can tell you that it was around about 50 or 52 millimeters. And so let me tell you that thereafter, the standard piping was about 60 millimeters. So it went up in size, which you'd think would be good, but not too high. Maybe too big a piping might cause some problems, but it didn't. So let me tell you that there was one section that looked like it choked down to about 55 millimeters. But remember, the orifice out of the turbo, the exit of the turbo was 50 millimeters, 52 millimeters. So 55 millimeter choking shouldn't have caused too many problems. It might have been about 62, 63 millimeters the piping, and it choked down to say 57 or so, 58. But let me tell you that what I did was I put this intercooler in place. I took out one side of the piping and thought that I wasn't going to be worrying about the other side, but I did. I did both sides of the piping. I used as many straights, solid straights, as I possibly could. And let me tell you that those solid straights have like a divot thing on them to help keep the rubber connection, the next rubber connection, which is silicon, new solid silicon bends and etc. and straights and sets and stuff. They were all about 76 millimeters, I think they were, 3-inch. In Imperial, it probably come from America. So I replaced everything that I could in straight, thick silicon bends and stuff at 76 millimeter, and the new huge intercooler went for a drive around the block and went, oh my God, this thing's like a rocket now in comparison to what it was like before. So that's got to mean better fuel economy, especially to keep your foot off the pedal, so to speak. And so I tested, and the lads at the auto shops were talking about irrigation nozzles, running irrigation nozzles. So let me tell you that I did put irrigation nozzles on for the first drive. It was simple to set up, just simply a 20-litre container in the back. In the toolbox that I call the plant room, it's going to have my electric air conditioning outdoor condenser and compressor in there when I finish soon. So what I did was initially I put the irrigation nozzle, because on trucks the outdoor condenser is aside from the radiator. It's a separate unit with its own fan. What I did was put a irrigation nozzle on that as well, knowing that in the days when I used to air condition people's houses, I used to get the condensate line. If it was a back-to-back, meaning the outdoor was outside of the indoor unit, I would get the condensate line and point it into the fins of the outdoor unit, which helped it to really work well, improve cooling on the outdoor unit. On the whole system itself. So what happened was that irrigation nozzle was also on the outdoor condenser fan and condenser unit, which is a side of the radiator, and going for it, say a 10k, 20k drive, the cabin frosted up. So I had left the air conditioning at full throttle, not worrying too much about it, at full throttle. It's just a dial arrangement, so it hasn't got digital anyway. and the air conditioning condensated all of the windows. That's how much better, how much better it was performing by dampening the outdoor condenser. Let me tell you this, that when water is just about to finish evaporating off, that's when it's at its coldest. So I did purchase a moisture sensor, and I was going to adjust the irrigation nozzle so that it sprayed and maybe sat for 30 seconds or a minute or something at 100 k's an hour, and then evaporated, and try and maintain it at that point of evaporation. So and it was substantially colder. Race cars, of course, run the same irrigation type stuff, except that their feed goes through dry ice. Six-pack sitting next to them in race cars, they call it a slushy. The young man at the auto shop who knew 100 times more than me, he was having lots of fun. He reminded me that they call it a slushy, and dry ice and etc. in a six-pack esky. So I thought about the same something along the same lines. I've got a 65 litre fridge freezer that I can turn into a freezer, and I'm thinking of running a copper line through that and filling it with 100% glycol coolant, antifreeze. So I'm not sure that I'll have to get it in green or red or blue yet, but I'm thinking about doing that. So anyhow, I had the irrigation nozzle on the intercooler, I had the irrigation nozzle on the air conditioning, and it ran out quite quickly because I didn't have the right nozzles. What you need to get is what they call a fogger. I think I might have one sitting here on the dining room table. Lucky to have that there. Oh, here's a whole packet of them. These are called foggers. These use 5.5 litres per hour. And these are the way to go, foggers. You can get them in different rates, but this is the lowest rate that I found. And they're a green one. They're a couple of bucks each from the irrigation shops, and not every irrigation shop has them. The one here in Capella did. I had to drive a few k's to get Capella to go and see to get those. The lads there are also great on advice and stuff. Man, they were totally switched on, some of the chaps there. And you know, in the areas that I was talking about, they have different people that work in different areas and stuff. They had some great fire pumps there as well. That would be good to set up in the house, running off a 3,000 litre water tank or something. It really doesn't hurt to wet your gyprock, your plasterboard. I've had plasterboard that got wet out the back from a gutter fault that they won't fix, and I am fixing it. And it got wet dozens and dozens of times, but it dries out and it's good. So anyhow, foggers are the way to go on the front. Two of them is 11 litres per hour. If you've got a couple of 20 litre containers, that's good. So you've definitely got to run one on your air conditioning condenser, even in a car. If it's in a car, then it's going to be the intercooler is somewhere up front there as well. So the same fogger will get to the intercooler, get to the air conditioning condenser, and of course in a car SUV it's going to be getting to the radiator as well. So and your thermostat, your mechanical thermostat in the car will take over there, same as in the truck. My intercooler is huge now, twice the size, twice the thickness, and here's the good news. That day test drive, the cabin just totally thermisted. It got filled with condensate. The air conditioning was running that well, so I can turn that back. And also what happened was the water, of course, ran out quite quickly. I had two 41 litres per minute or something, 41 litres per hour nozzles, and so it ran out quite quickly. But for the next 4 days, I was driving in the rain. And so what happened was, I noticed that the fuel economy was at 10.2 litres, 10.2 kilometres per litre. 10.2 kilometres per litre with all of the new intercooler, new piping and moisture nozzles. So what happened was next, I was driving around, hadn't got around to getting these foggers yet and installing them on the truck. I was driving around with a new intercooler, new piping. I call it stage 2, and stage 3 would be the foggers. So stage 2, with just the new piping, new intercooler, the truck was getting 9.6 k's per litre, and so the difference was from the wet day to then was 10.2. So stage 1, 8 kilometres per litre with Morries in the diff, gearbox, and 25% of the motor. Stage 2 was intercooler piping and largest intercooler I could fit in there, and thermo fans, of course, on the intercooler, and getting rid of the mechanical fan that was on the motor. And those mechanical fans have a thermistor type drive in them, hydrostatic. The oil heats up and it starts spinning better. That fan was actually slightly better, but I'm still going to run the electric thermostatic fans, and we're going to get some moisture happening, which will cool the motor a bit more. So stage 1, Morries, 8 kilometres per litre. Stage 2, which was intercooling, piping and intercooler, 9.6 kilometres per litre, costed around $300. Stage 3 is irrigation nozzle on the air conditioning condenser and irrigation nozzle on the intercooler with thermostatic fans, 10.2 kilometres per litre. So stage 3 for me is going to be changing the diff ratio, but stage 4 is a little bit better, a little bit more exciting. So I'm going to tell you about, I'm going to swap that around, and I'm going to make stage 4 the differential, because the diff center. Now, not everybody's going to change their diff center. You can go a cheaper way and change the size of the rims and tires by changing the circumference of the wheel. But stage 3 for me is going to be this. Actually, there's 2 stages to this. The first stage is that the air filter canister with one single cartridge inside, about this size, I'm going to change it to a interstate truck canister to lessen the restriction of airflow intake. And the interstate trucks have a dual cartridge. There's 2 cartridges, a pre and an aft cartridge inside. Plus, it should be less restriction of the airflow by the air filter. And I'm going to put a snorkel up there, but I don't think I'm going to face it into the wind. I'm going to face it the other way. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do after I put that interstate air filter on is this. This is an exciting one. I heard about a chap, I had already decided to do this, and I heard about a chap who had wrapped the intercooling piping with some silver foil, padded, insulated silver foil. I think he got it out of shopping bags or Eskies or something like that. And it improved fuel economy and power. So what I'm going to do is the next step beyond that. So it's going to come into the stack, the air intake stack, go through that big interstate air filter, dual cartridge that are quite cheap from the wreckers, especially if you buy an old tin one and you can get it chromed, and then down and under the tray, and it's going to go around the back of the tray and come into a monstrous interstate intercooler that's up under the tray. Now it takes up nearly the whole area of underneath the tray. That's how big the intercooler is. It's going to be filled above it with thermofans and misters, of course, and then where the other end of that intercooler comes out, it's only about 450 millimeters to the turbo. So there's going to be a bend at the turbo, and then straight out of the intercooler, and all of that piping from the intercooler itself is going to be insulated, and foggers on the thermostatic fans. I got my fingers crossed. Once I then do the diff center, I'm hopefully looking at somewhere around about, on a car license, this truck, somewhere around about 14 kilometers per litre or 15 kilometers per litre. And the other thing that I'd like to do after that is put a natural gas system. There's about 5 different systems that you can put of natural gas on your diesel vehicle. One of them is that it runs on natural gas. I don't want to do that one. Another one is that it supplements the diesel, or they use the diesel to ignite the gas. I don't want to do that one. What I want to do is the system where it supplements diesel and with an intake of natural gas. Now natural gas itself is about 85 or 89% methane, which is a very clean burning gas. And of course natural gas comes out of the ground and it's got other things in it like sulfur and stuff like that. But they say, I've done the read up and the studies on it, that methane is a very clean burning gas. So I'm thinking of running 100% methane and having some pipe work, some stormwater concrete pipe work into the ground. My electrical teacher taught me this. It must have been 45 years ago as an apprentice electrician. He taught me at about 15 years old. He taught the class, not just me of course, that over in Africa where he came from, they had big pits that they would put cow manure in. They would turn it into a slurry and put it in there, and it would run generators at night in the streets, 1 or 2 street lights, etc. So that's what I'm contemplating now. When you bury a concrete pipe, whatever size, into the ground, it's not going to make the ground explode, of course, and what you really need to do is cap it off with, say, 1 millimeter of brass sheeting, or maybe some glass, some safety glass that will break if there's an explosion up into the air. So if I'm going to fill, let's say this was the pipe down here into the ground, and let's say that I only left 6 inches of air, or which will be gas, at the top, and all the remainder is grass clippings and water. Maybe you'll have 2 of them where one's fermenting and the other one's generating methane, and maybe you can top it up, the methane, and throw some of that bacteria in there, or yogurt or some crap, and make it ferment even faster. And the bottom of it really doesn't have to be concrete capped off, just as long as the water doesn't seep out too much, because you want to maintain only a 6-inch depth or something at the top, so that there's not that much gas to explode if it did happen. And you can store methane gas at a number of different pressures. Methane gas is generally in vehicle storage, or natural gas is generally in vehicle storage tanks at about 500 psi, which is more, I think, than LP gas. I think LP gas is only at about 150 or 250 psi. I can't quite remember. So yeah, that's the next thing I'm contemplating doing, and maybe, just maybe, that will give some good results. Another thing that I'm thinking about doing, I don't know whether I'll go ahead with it, I don't know whether I'll go ahead with all of that, but I'm definitely going ahead with the intercooler under the tray, and looking at, and the diff center, and electric air conditioning. Get that compressor off your motor. I'm doing electric air conditioning. I'm cutting up a room portable air conditioner, and it's just a matter of cutting a bit of the piping, and regassing. When I was a kid, when I was about 17, they brought out a 626 Mazda that had the rubber piping of the air conditioning simply onto the copper piping, or aluminium piping it was in those days, and clamped. So I intend, you can buy nowadays what they call super clamps, and those super clamps, I think they're titanium. The equivalent in stainless is, well, they don't make that equivalent in stainless. It's more resistant to the climate than stainless. They call it 407 or something like that. Titanium super clamps, and maybe I'll put 2 or 3 of those on the little tiny 5/16 air conditioning pipe, and I'm going to use brake fluid piping, brake line piping from the outdoor unit, which will be in my toolbox that I call the plant room, and the indoor unit per se will be on the back of the cabin. It's going to be mounted up in a polystyrene and indoor. So crikey, it's been that long since I played with air conditioning. Anyhow, I'll pipe it all up, get somebody to vac it down, or I might get a vac pump myself, vac it down to make sure there's no leaks, and test it myself. There won't be any leaks with 3 of those super clamps on there, I'm telling you, and get somebody to gas it up. So and that gets the compressor, the engine compressor, air conditioning compressor, off the load of the motor. The main reason I started up all this stuff was I did the air conditioning thing, electric air conditioning, was that I wanted to be able to leave my dog in the truck cabin while I go into the shopping centres or something for maybe an hour or so, and be able to come back and check on him and run a good temperature in there. In the plant room, that toolbox on the side, I've already purchased 4 120 amp hour lithiums, plus I've got a 250 watt solar panel on the roof of the truck. It's going to have a solar panel that slides forward, another 250 watt panel will slide forward, and another 250 watt panel will slide backwards. So that's 750 watts on top of the cabin, and it'll all, of course, lock into place. But I'm also going to build some 500 millimeter wide boxes at the back. I think they're about 1650 long. One of them eventually is going to be a fridge freezer with 2 lids, and they're about 250 mil deep. They will be, so you can insulate those really well and run some copper piping in there, and a refrigeration unit in the plant box. Refrigeration compressors really don't use that much juice, and you can get them in 12 volt. Finally, one day I'll get around to changing the 240 volt air conditioning outdoor compressor that will be in the plant room. And so just for love. And the other side, on the other, the box is also going to be a mud guard, but on the other side, the other box is going to be a slide out kitchen, all your cooking stuff in there. So anyhow, purchase of the vehicle, 5.5 k's per litre. Stage 1, Maury's 100% in the diff and gearbox, and 25% in the motor, 9.6 k's per litre. Stage 3, irrigation nozzles on the intercooler and on your air conditioning. I'm now at this moment, when driving in the wet and when I do the foggers, 10.2 k's per litre. Stage 4, let's call it, is the giant interstate air cooler. A bit of steampunk there, maybe chrome it up or something. And stage 5 will be that intercooler that's up under the tray with foggers and thermostatic fans on it. A total draw of about 60 amps. That's also why we need the solar panels to supplement the alternator. You don't want to put too much load on your alternator continually, because that's the same as having an air conditioning compressor on there. And of course lots of lithium batteries that will charge up all the time as well. The lithium batteries are a bit of a battery bank type of thing, a bit of an energy source. So let me tell you one last thing. I don't think that I'll ever get around to doing this, but it really is quite simple. That if you had a good battery bank, let's say that you had a Pantech truck that was quite large and you could fit quite a lot of solar panels up on top of the Pantech, well, you could get them to charge the lithium battery supply. And what you could do is also, through a good size alternator, also charge the lithiums and run that big battery bank of lithiums into a 48 volt. Have a look online. A 48 volt 20 up to 20. They start at 10 kilowatt, 16 kilowatt, 25 kilowatt electric motor. You run a triple pulley on the electric motor and a triple pulley just on your tail shaft as it comes out of the gearbox, and of course a variable supply, maybe one of those racing paddles or something on the steering wheel or similar, or some sort of trigger, a simple trigger at 5 volts that tells your electric motor how much to pulse there. So there's quite a lot. If you ran the electric motor, which of course would be illegal unless you got a mechanical engineer to certify it, you're probably looking at fair income, looking at 20 k's per litre on the highway. What I was thinking about doing with that electric motor is having a speed limiter on it, so that you could only switch it on when you were doing, say, 90 kilometres an hour. So to supplement while you're just idling per se along on the highway. Not to be really used around the back streets and stuff, but most certainly used on the highway for long distance. So that's about it. There's going to be some more things that come up. Now, I did a video recently on the cure of diabetes and Hashimoto. I'm about to do a video now and put it up there on mad cow's disease. Yeah, yeah. Hey, I know some of you are looking at me and saying, "There's the mad cow there on the video right in front of us." But I'm going to tell you, I'm really cocksure on this one. I'm 99.9% sure what causes mad cow's disease. And what mad cow's disease is, it's the symptoms occurring in cattle, whereas the same cause that causes mad cow's disease causes diabetes and Hashimoto in us. Whoa! Some of you already watched that video on diabetes and Hashimoto. So stay tuned and have a look at what causes mad cow's disease. How can this guy come up with these things? Well, I meditate a lot while I'm working on God. I'm an ordained minister. I'm a medium, and I was licensed in 6 different technical trades. And it's a little bit like this. As a technician, you can get the gist of repairing something if you can associate with what's going on with it. Being an electrician and gas, for a lot of gas heaters and stuff are caused by that. If I was a medium working with a deck of cards or something, and I don't normally use cards, I'm speaking directly from loved ones in spirit, say clairvoyance might help you to look at a situation and knowing what the card means. Well, it's similar, in a similar way, by associating with the card, I can associate with mechanical things and etc. by all of those trade licenses and skills that I studied at. And back in those days when I studied that sort of thing, trade skills and stuff, I never read the books that came with cards for reading, for doing readings, psychic readings and stuff. I never read the book because I had dyslexia. I never read anything in my entire life, but I wrote a book called The Holy Grail of Science. Get a hold of that, and also check out Rainbows Are Magnetic. You have to do a YouTube search on all of these things. Forget about doing a search engine search. Search in YouTube. Okay, how many hours we got on this? 47, 48 minutes. That's okay, folks. It's all good stuff. We'll catch you soon, hey?